Bigfoot, Sasquatch, encounter number 3, Brazil. Here we go, folks. What can you say when a myth turns to reality? But this is exactly what happened to me. I worked at a fast food restaurant, probably the most famous of them all, without having to name it. You know the one, the big yellow arches and whatnot. The arrival of this restaurant into our sleepy little town had been met with a mixture of negativity and excitement by the townsfolk. The 2-lane motorway, a massive government project at the time, had not long been completed, and rumours had begun to circulate of large amounts of money being passed to various town council officials, given that the planned restaurant's location was in a particularly sensitive ecological area. But this being Brazil, where corruption is so deeply embedded into every fabric of our society, the restaurant, with its large drive-through facility, one being for cars and the other for trucks, was soon a permanent fixture on the outskirts of our town. The new motorway, a huge engineering task, due to it having to pass through steep, forested, mountainous passes, would open up our little town to the rest of the world. At least this is what we were told. Sure, it did bring visitors to our town, but the real winner was my place of work, and boy, we sure were busy. The restaurant was separated from the motorway with a thin line of trees. There were only 2 access lanes from the motorway to the restaurant for southgoing traffic, an entry and an exit lane. But this is not to say that we lost any business from northgoing traffic. No, the many large potholes through the streets of the town and out onto the old secondary road that us workers used to get to the restaurant told of the many trucks who were passing back and forth through the town just to get to the restaurant. After just 1 year, a second drive-through for trucks was added. It was around this time that the strange events began to happen. We noticed that our large rubbish bins at the back of the restaurant were being raided. Not that there were rubbish and food being strewn everywhere. No, it was quite the opposite, as there were no signs or trails left near or leading away from the bins. The only way that we began to notice is that some of the bins, having been full, say on a Tuesday night, would be half full or a quarter full on a Wednesday morning. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my mother one night after work. She asked me if I had noticed a decrease in the number of homeless people living on the streets of the town. It was only when she continued that I began to put 2 and 2 together. She said that an increasing number of homeless people had begun to migrate out into the forest, more or less on the other side of the motorway from the restaurant. I told her about our rubbish bins being raided, and she said that this must be the reason. Impossible, I said. It would be suicidal to cross the motorway and with bags of rubbish in hand. And besides, the 2 lanes of the motorway were separated by an 8-foot-high concrete barricade. Me and some of the other girls at work sat down one night, and where more of the strange events began to unfold. "Do you know the name that the truckers are calling this stretch of the motorway here?" my friend said. "What?" I said, with me seemingly the only one unaware of the answer, given that I didn't tend to the cashiers like the other girls. "They call it the Phantom Highway." The girls went on to tell me everything the truckers were saying. "We close our eyes passing this restaurant going northwards at night," the truckers said. "If you close your eyes, you won't see the hairy phantom pass within feet of the truck. Going southwards is when you sometimes see them fully, perched atop of the concrete barricade, a huge hairy-like figure carrying some large object in their arms." "Girls, what are we saying here?" I said. You know that truck drivers drive long hours. Maybe they were joking." "No," the girl said. 1 or 2 maybe, but not the amount that tell the same story." "But what is the harm in all of these spooky stories? At least the homeless people are making use of the scraps from here," the girl said. I agreed, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it. The next day off, I pestered my brother and 2 of his friends to go with me to the homeless camp. As it was not an easy trek, I had to promise them 3 free meals at the restaurant, plus 3 large milkshakes. We arrived at the camp, and I was immediately taken back by the amount of people there. There must have been close to 50. The place was spotless, and at a total opposite of my misplaced preconceptions. "Look," my brother said as he pointed. As in a perfect circle, there were overhead leaf-like structures, all intricately weaved in the center of the circle. In the center of the circle was a fire pit, and next to this a large metallic vessel filled with water. This caught my attention, as I remember one similar that was reported as being stolen from a truck's trailer at a restaurant while the driver ate inside. What was strange was the driver couldn't understand how this could have happened, as the heavy straps used to tie it to the trailer were all intact, but the welded steel connection points on the trailer had been pulled off. A man came and started to talk to us. You know what's great about what I am about to say? Is that nobody will believe it because we are homeless people. I have never been so happy as I have been here. We really have a great community here, and it is because of them. Because of who, I asked. The hairy ones, giants, whatever you want to call them. Look what they do for us. We are protected from the rain, they feed us, they give us water. He said. How do they feed you, I asked. Well, they sometimes bring fruits and berries, but mostly we eat from there, he said, as he pointed in the direction of the restaurant. Have you ever seen a creature leap 20 feet from a standing position and with the strength of 20 or more men? Incredible they are, these creatures. Okay, they took some dogs, but that is a small price to pay for what they provide for us, he said. Took some dogs, I replied. Yes, he continued. Some of us had dogs that barked a lot, especially when they were around. They didn't like that. We left with my brother and his friends laughing. Sister, you don't believe that, do you? My brother said. They are crazy homeless people. I told my mother and the girls at work, but eventually things went back to normal. The rubbish bins would continue to be emptied, but it actually felt good knowing where it was going. We even started to put extra goodies in there, full meals and carefully wrapped. Little did I know that I would soon come face to face with one of these creatures. I had finished my shift, and as my father was over 20 minutes late, as sometimes happened due to his work, I figured I would have to start walking the 20 minutes or so journey back into town. I wasn't scared as the many trucks with their beaming lights lit the way in both directions. But this night, I don't know why, probably because I was more tired than usual, that I took a final shortcut through a small park to get to my home. I didn't hear my attacker as he came from behind. I remember his urine-smelling hands covering my mouth, with his other hand holding a knife in front of me. He didn't ask for money, and I immediately tried to scream through my covered mouth. He pulled me to the ground, kneeling on my arms as his hand still covered my mouth. He then ripped my skirt with his knife, before bringing the knife to his mouth and slowly shaking his head. It didn't matter, as I was already too scared to scream, as it now felt that everything was happening in slow motion. As he was pulling my underwear off, it happened. The man, like being attached to a bungee rope, suddenly was jolted up. I could hear his screaming as he struck the branches of the overlying trees before falling back onto the ground. He was groaning with pain, but there was more to come. This is when the huge creature came into view. Out of the darkness it came and stood over the man. It looked over at me, the huge dark outline, all that I could make out. I couldn't get over the size of the creature, like a basketball player in height, but with bodybuilder proportions. It let out a deafening roar and dropped to its knees before the screams of the man could be heard. It came and stood over me before putting its back to me. It immediately turned around at the exact time I had gotten to my feet. I could hear his deep breathing, my gut instinct telling me it was a male. And then he began to look around. Within a blink of an eye, it was at the entrance to the park. I watched as he pulled out the steel railings from the concrete foundations. With an underhand throwing action, he hurled the railings up against the electrical cables above, the huge bang and sparks like a fireworks display filling the air. The man was still screaming in agony as I approached him. What I saw next will live with me forever. His scrotum and penis were on the ground beside him. I got angry with myself as I started to feel some sympathy for him. I could hear people gathering at the park entrance. I began to walk out, trying to hold my skirt together with my hand. To my left, in the shadows, the creature followed before he suddenly stopped. I turned in his direction and said, "Thank you." Why did I expect a response, I thought, as nothing came. I then raised my hand. Seconds passed before he too raised his hand. He then disappeared from my view. Some police cars eventually arrived. I was brought to the station where they began to question me. They didn't believe my story and were trying to insinuate that I had done this to the man, as his knife was found beside him. After 2 hours, another policeman arrived. He had been to the hospital where the man was brought. I was cleared, as from what I could understand, the doctors had said it was not a knife that had done this to the man, but instead his scrotum and penis had been ripped off, but with such a force that they could not explain. As if my night could not have gotten worse, I was asked to wait for another man to arrive. The longest time seemed to pass before he arrived. He walked in and said, "Come on, let's take you home." He drove me home and didn't speak a word until we pulled up at my house. He then turned to me and said, They detected you were going to be in danger before it actually happened. It's incredible what they can do. What are they? I asked. He didn't need to speak, as his expression said it all. I wasn't going to get an answer from him. So there you go, folks. Another Bigfoot Sasquatch encounter story. I hope you liked it. For this one, I just got the bare scraps. It could have just been a rumor online, and I had to write the story around it. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'm not a writer, of course. I'm an engineer by my day job. I'm an engineer. If anyone has any Bigfoot stories, like I said before, or heard anything that I could even write a story around, because I'm running out of. I'm finding it more difficult to find stories, especially here in Brazil. But if anyone has any stories from anywhere around the world, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, paranormal, anything strange, UFOs, you want me to do a story, I'd be very happy to do, because I enjoy writing these stories like this. So, and please smash a like on the video and subscribe if you want me to do more of these videos. And yeah, that's a beautiful backdrop there now, folks. Right there, you see the moon there. Yeah. So, folks, hope you enjoyed it, and catch you next time. Bye bye.